And Travel Watch, the magazine Travel and Leisure and Food and Wine have teamed up to release a list of the world's best restaurants.
It's the first time the two brands have partnered to create the list. There are 30 restaurants, 5 of them are here in the U.S. And Jacqui Gifford is the editor-in-chief of Travel and Leisure and joins us now.
Hey.
When I
Hello, guys.
saw that this is what we were doing, I thought, what a daunting task and what a way to instantly make enemies all over the world. I know, right? Because everyone's going to be like, what about my place?
Right.
Yeah,
Why did I make the cut?
So what's the methodology here?
So this is a really exciting story that we put together, the two brands. We sent one critic around the world, Besha Rodell. She's one of the last remaining anonymous restaurant critics in the world. So if you actually go to her Instagram handle, you'll never see her face. She posts.
It's amazing.
Which I think is really unique in this day and age. So what we did is we looked to a top people in the food world, right? Chefs, different writers, so people like Ruth Reichel, Gail Simmons, Alex Atala, Enrique Olvera, people that are really well known in the food world. We said, what are your favorite places to eat? So they nominated.
And you can't pick your own.
It could, yes, you can't pick your own. But what's really different about this list, I should add, we were really focusing on restaurants that have a deep sense of place. They're really tied to their local communities. It's not necessarily about price. Some of them, for example, one is a food truck in Tijuana, where your meal might be only $5. And then, of course, another restaurant that made the list was Noma in Copenhagen, where, of course, you're going to spend a little bit more money. It's a multi-course, very famous restaurant from Rene Redzepi. So we really asked these folks, okay, what are your favorite places to eat? They sent in their lists. Our editors weighed in, and we came up with this kind of master list of restaurants that Besha had to try, and we flew her around the world. She went to 81 restaurants in 24 countries. She spent over 100 hours in the air on a plane. When we published the story, she said, I still have jet lag. That's how exhausted I am, because she's based in Australia.
But she's also very well fed.
She's very well fed.
And Vlad and I want you to know that we would do this thing for you on the cheap. We don't mind flying coach.
You're like, as editor, you're like, you know what? I'll take this one.
Yeah, I'll take
this one.
It was it's a really special list. So 30 restaurants made the cut. What I'm really proud of is, we really looked for a diverse mix of places that, again, it's not all expensive. They're places that are tied to their community. It really reflects how people eat and travel today. And a lot of people, I think, and you guys know this too, they're booking their trips around restaurants.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
they book the restaurant first, and then they get there, and then they sort of, fill in the blanks with the trip. So it's a really special list, and we're really proud of it.
So we've got we're going to certainly obviously focus on some of the U.S. restaurants on the list, but just before we dive into that, the point that you made about restaurants that are tied to their local community, I note here that you've got a lot of really interesting restaurants from a lot of interesting places, including Beirut and Puerto Rico. Jose Enrique, who, Puerto Rico's been through so much, and to highlight a restaurant that makes the list, a list like this one, being one of the top restaurants in the world, is really a big deal.
Yeah, so actually, Besha was in the air and traveling for 4 months, and this was one of the last stops she made. And what she found when she got to Puerto Rico, what was really interesting about Jose Enrique, it opened originally about 10 years ago, and he quickly became one of San Juan's most famous chefs. He looks to create dishes that are tied with the local tradition, so dishes like mofongo, but he does them in a little bit more of a refined way and elevates the atmosphere of the restaurant. And he actually closed after Hurricane Maria, and he's now reopened in a new space, and he was serving meals to the community after the hurricane. So she really felt, it's a beautiful expression of Puerto Rico, and when you go to San Juan, you just have to go to this restaurant. So that's really the kind of place that we were looking for when we created the list.
Okay, so let's talk about one that's at least we could get to more immediately if we wanted to. The Blue Hill at Stone Barns.
Yeah, so that's actually not too far from New York City. It's in Botanical Hills. It's actually, so this is from Chef Dan Barber. He's kind of this mad scientist, and he's just so, again, tied to his community, a sense of place. It's set on a massive farm. It was once part of the Rockefeller estate up there. And so when you go, you're actually eating this amazing multi-course meal in an old stone barn. And, Besha recommends this dish, and he takes radishes and that have been frozen and thawed in the ground for 18 months, dips them in beef tallow, and they're served, and they're kind of swinging on this little platform. And it's like this, it's performance art. And when you go again to this restaurant, it's about food as theater, but it's also tied to a sense of place. And he really believes in supporting local businesses, and you're tasting things that are grown right there on site.
We saw no menus, so you sort of get what you get.
You get what you get. It's a multi-course meal, and obviously people, if you have dietary dietary restrictions with any of these restaurants, you let them know. But I think when I go to a place like that, you just sort of enjoy and be surprised by what comes out at you, and it's very whimsical.
All right, so staying in the U.S., we did Puerto Rico, we just did New York. Now let's go to California. I love Japanese food. Is it NAKA?
NAKA. So this is run by Nikki Nakayama. She's based in California and Los Angeles, but she's Japanese heritage. So she focuses on kaiseki. So that's a multi-course meal. It's a tasting menu, and what she does is she takes, she trained actually in Japan for a long time, but she uses California ingredients to create these beautiful, beautiful plates. So you might have a kanpachi with a bell pepper puree or avocado puree, and it's really tied again to a sense of place, and it reflects both her California and her Japanese heritage.
Gray in Savannah, Georgia?
Yeah, that's a really interesting spot. So the Gray is set in a former bus station that was actually segregated when it first opened many years ago. And now what's amazing, it's run by an African-American female chef, Mashama Bailey, and it's just a beautiful story of a space that had a painful past being reinvented as one of Savannah's top restaurants.
Oh, that's very cool.
Really, really cool. I note here on the list, outside of the U.S., you have 2 restaurants from India. Not a lot of other countries get 2, but
in Mumbai.
You get one in Mumbai. It's called
Mask and Sri Thanakar Bojanalayya.
That's right.
So that's another restaurant that again is really tied, and it's been there for something like 60 years. And you go and you do the thali plates, which is a really traditional Indian dish. And this was recommended to me by several people. It's not the fanciest restaurant in Mumbai by far, but people feel like if you go there and you miss it. I'm going to India myself in December, so I've added that to my list.
Really?
I've got to go.
That's awesome.
So wait, we forgot one more from the U.S. that's on the list. SWAN Oyster Depot.
Yeah, so this is in
I
San
take it
Francisco.
there's oysters?
There's definitely oysters.
I'm there.
It's a very casual, classic restaurant in San Francisco. People love to go and sit at the counters. It's beloved by locals and tourists alike, and you get your oysters, and it's been run by the same family for years. The specialty is the Sicilian sashimi. Beyond the oysters, you get the fresh catch of the day, and they serve it with, they douse it with olive oil and peppers. So, and it's, again, a not crazy expensive place. It's just a real beautiful place if you love seafood.
I have just one, where I'm like, what? There's only one restaurant from France on this list. When I know. Well, this is the tough part of this story. So she spent plenty of time in France, and you have to be brutal. You've got to cut it down to something that's that you feel. And this is where we trusted her and her instincts. I love France. It's one of my favorite places to go for food. But she felt, you know what? There are other places right now that better fit what we were trying to do editorially.
Well, you imagine how tough it is, a country like France that has so many good restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, so you know that there's going to be great restaurants that just got to fall by the wayside versus another country that maybe not really sort of exploding in the culinary department.
No, I mean, this list is really great. It's really interesting. Like I pointed out, you've got Slovenia, you've got Beirut, you've got Singapore, in addition to the usual suspects, but you have 2 places in India, you've got Mumbai. I just think it's wonderful that you focused it on this idea of being tied to the communities that they represent.
Glad and I are going to fight over that.
Yes, we've been.
I can maybe get to another copy.
Okay. And Jacqui Gifford, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can check out the full list in the September issues of Food and Wine and Travel and Leisure magazines.